Marcus Lee stood outside the imposing glass facade of the Victoria Gallery, clutching his leather portfolio tightly. Inside it were his most prized works, paintings he had poured his soul into, each one telling a story of resilience, struggle, and triumph. For years, Marcus had worked tirelessly, honing his craft and dreaming of the day when his art would be recognized in the exclusive world of high-end galleries. Today, he hoped, would be that day. The Victoria Gallery was known for its prestige, a place where only the most refined artists were showcased. It catered to an elite clientele, and gaining a spot on its walls could launch a career overnight. But for Marcus, a black artist from a working-class background, the stakes were higher. His journey to this point had been riddled with rejections, most cloaked in vague language about fit and aesthetic. Still, he believed in his work and in the stories it told. Taking a deep breath, he stepped through the gallery's heavy glass doors. Inside the gallery. The interior of the Victoria Gallery was as intimidating as its reputation, gleaming marble floors, pristine white walls, and an air of hushed exclusivity. Marcus felt out of place, but refused to let it show. He approached the receptionist, a young woman who barely looked up from her desk. "I have an appointment with Miss Sterling," Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the nerves tightening in his chest. The receptionist gave him a brief once-over before making a call. After a short conversation, she directed him down a hallway. "Her office is at the end," she said curtly. Marcus made his way to the office, his footsteps echoing in the quiet corridor. When he entered, Victoria Sterling, the gallery's owner, was seated behind an immaculate glass desk. She was the epitome of elitism, her tailored suit, perfectly coiffed hair, and icy demeanor exuded an air of superiority. She glanced up as Marcus walked in, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Lee, is it?" she said, gesturing for him to sit. "Let's see what you've brought." The meeting. Marcus set his portfolio on the desk and carefully pulled out his first painting. It was titled Unbroken Roots, a powerful piece that depicted a tree with sprawling roots breaking through concrete, its branches reaching toward a stormy sky. The painting was bold and emotional, a testament to resilience and growth. Victoria stood and examined the piece, her lips pursed in thought. Marcus waited, his heart pounding as the silence stretched on. Finally, she turned to him, her expression one of faint amusement. "It's colorful," she said, her tone laced with condescension. "But not exactly what we're looking for." Marcus frowned, his confidence faltering. "I see," he said. "This piece represents resilience and overcoming adversity. I thought its story might resonate with your audience." Victoria chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Our clientele isn't looking for stories, Mr. Lee. They want pieces that are sophisticated and elegant, something that complements their homes. This," she gestured at the painting, "feels more emotional. Amateurish even." Marcus felt a sting of humiliation but tried to remain composed. "Art is supposed to evoke emotion," he said carefully. "It's meant to connect with people." Victoria raised an eyebrow, her smile widening slightly. "Art is a business," she said flatly. "My clients aren't interested in connection. They're interested in investments, pieces that hold value and prestige. Your work doesn't fit that profile." The words hit Marcus like a blow, but he refused to let her see his pain. "Thank you for your time," he said, reaching for his painting. Victoria returned to her desk, already dismissing him. "Best of luck, Mr. Lee," she said. "The art world isn't for everyone." The aftermath. As Marcus walked out of the gallery, the humiliation weighed heavily on him. Victoria's words echoed in his mind, amateurish. Emotional. Not what we're looking for. It wasn't just his art she had dismissed, it felt like she had dismissed him. For a moment, Marcus considered giving up. Maybe the art world wasn't meant for people like him. Maybe the stories he wanted to tell didn't belong in the pristine halls of galleries like the Victoria. But then, as he reached the sidewalk and looked back at the towering facade, something shifted. The sting of rejection gave way to determination. She doesn't see it now, Marcus thought, his jaw tightening. But one day, she'll regret underestimating me. With that, Marcus walked away, not defeated, but resolute. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he knew one thing for certain: his story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The rejection at the Victoria Gallery lingered in Marcus Lee's mind like an unwanted echo. Victoria Sterling's words, amateurish, emotional, not suitable, had cut deeply, but they didn't break him. Instead, they ignited something inside him. Marcus decided he would prove her wrong, not for her validation but to honor the passion and purpose that had driven him to create in the first place. Pouring frustration into art. Back in his modest apartment, Marcus transformed his small living room into a makeshift studio. The space was cluttered with canvases, brushes, and jars of paint, but to Marcus, it was a sanctuary. Here, he could express himself without judgment, without the constraints of galleries dictating what was refined or marketable. His new series of paintings were raw and deeply personal, each one a reflection of his journey. One piece, Fractured Dreams, depicted a figure standing on a cracked foundation, reaching for a distant, glowing horizon. Another, Roots Unchained, portrayed sprawling roots breaking through chains, symbolizing liberation and growth. The colors were bold and unapologetic, the imagery powerful and evocative. As Marcus worked, he found solace in the act of creation. Every brushstroke became a release, every completed piece a testament to his resilience. He was no longer painting for acceptance or approval, he was painting to tell his story, to connect with those who understood struggle and perseverance. The financial toll. While Marcus's creativity flourished, his financial situation became increasingly precarious. Art supplies weren't cheap, and his part-time job barely covered rent and groceries. There were nights when he skipped meals to save money for paint or canvases. Yet, even in the face of hardship, Marcus refused to give up. He knew the value of his work, even if the world didn't see it yet. Rejections from other galleries continued to pile up, each one a reminder of the barriers he faced. But for every no, Marcus found renewed determination. He began to see rejection not as an end but as part of the process. A chance opportunity. One evening, while browsing through local event listings, Marcus stumbled upon a flyer for a community art show. It wasn't a prestigious event, just a gathering of local artists showcasing their work in a neighborhood park. But it was an opportunity, and Marcus knew he couldn't afford to let it pass. Over the next week, Marcus prepared tirelessly for the show. He selected his most powerful pieces, touching up details and ensuring each one was ready to shine. On the day of the event, he packed his paintings into a borrowed van and made his way to the park. The art show was a modest but vibrant affair, with tents and booths set up under a canopy of trees. Families strolled through the displays, chatting with artists and admiring their work. Marcus set up his booth with care, arranging his paintings to catch the eye of passers-by. Connecting with the audience. As the day went on, Marcus's booth began to draw attention. People stopped to admire his work, their expressions ranging from curiosity to awe. A young woman lingered in front of Roots Unchained, her eyes brimming with tears. This speaks to me," she said softly. "It's like you captured everything I've been feeling." For Marcus, those moments of connection were priceless. These weren't wealthy collectors or gallery owners, they were everyday people who saw themselves in his art. It reminded him of why he had started painting in the first place, to tell stories that resonated, that mattered. Despite the modest setting, Marcus sold several pieces that day, earning enough to cover his expenses and buy new supplies. But more importantly, he left the event with a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in months, he felt like his work was being seen for what it truly was. A glimmer of hope. As the afternoon sun began to set, Marcus noticed an older man standing at the edge of his booth, studying his paintings intently. The man was well dressed, with an air of quiet authority. Marcus felt a flicker of nervousness as the man approached. "Are you the artist behind these?" the man asked, gesturing to the paintings. "Yes," Marcus replied, standing a little taller. "I'm Marcus Lee." The man extended his hand. "Edward Garrison." I'm an art critic for the Art Vanguard. Your work caught my eye. Marcus froze for a moment, barely able to process what he'd just heard. Edward Garrison was a name he recognized, a renowned critic known for discovering new talent and championing authenticity in the art world. It's an honor to meet you, Marcus said, shaking his hand. Edward gestured toward Fractured Dreams. This piece, it's extraordinary. The emotion, the depth, it's unlike anything I've seen in years. Marcus felt his chest swell with pride. Thank you, he said, his voice steady, despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. Edward spent the next hour at Marcus's booth, asking thoughtful questions about his process and inspirations. Before leaving, he purchased Roots Unchained and promised to feature Marcus in his next column. Your work deserves to be seen, Edward said. And I'm going to make sure it is. The spark of change. That evening, as Marcus packed up his booth and drove home, he felt a renewed sense of hope. The day had been more than just an opportunity to showcase his art, it had been a turning point. For the first time, Marcus felt like the tide was shifting in his favor. Little did he know, Edward Garrison's words would set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. A week after the community art show, Marcus Lee was back in his studio, working on a new piece. Though his encounter with Edward Garrison had left him feeling cautiously optimistic, Marcus didn't want to let his hopes get ahead of him. The art world was full of fleeting promises, and he had been let down too many times before. Still, there was something about Edward's genuine admiration that lingered in his mind like a soft, warm light. Then, one morning, everything changed. The review that changed everything. Marcus was sipping his coffee when his phone began buzzing incessantly. Messages and notifications flooded his screen. Confused, he clicked on one of the links sent by a friend, which directed him to the Art Vanguard, one of the most respected art publications in the world. The headline of the featured article read, Marcus Lee, a bold new voice in contemporary art. His breath caught as he began to read. Edward Garrison's review was nothing short of glowing. In it, he described Marcus's work as a fearless exploration of resilience, identity, and the human spirit. He singled out specific pieces like Fractured Dreams and Roots Unchained, praising their emotional depth and masterful use of color. Marcus Lee doesn't just paint, Edward wrote. He tells stories that cut to the core of what it means to overcome, to grow, to hope. His work is a testament to the power of authenticity, and in a world that often favors polish over passion. Marcus's art is a much-needed breath of fresh air. The review ended with a bold declaration, Marcus Lee is not just an artist, he is a movement. The art world would do well to embrace his vision, for it is nothing short of revolutionary. The ripple effect. The article went viral, spreading across social media and sparking conversations among art enthusiasts, collectors, and critics. Within hours, Marcus's inbox was flooded with emails. Gallery owners who had previously rejected him were now vying for the chance to represent his work. Collectors offered staggering sums for his paintings, and journalists requested interviews to learn more about the artist who was taking the art world by storm. One message stood out among the rest, a formal invitation from Turner Contemporary Gallery in New York, one of the most prestigious art institutions in the country. The curator wrote, We've seen Edward Garrison's feature on your work, and we are captivated by your vision. We would be honored to host your first solo exhibition. For Marcus, it felt like stepping into another world. The man who had been dismissed by so many was now at the center of a cultural phenomenon. The first major exhibition. A month later, Marcus found himself standing in the Grand Hall of Turner Contemporary Gallery. His solo exhibition, titled Unchained, The Art of Marcus Lee, was a resounding success. The gallery was packed with critics, collectors, and art enthusiasts, all eager to see the work that had captivated Edward Garrison. Each painting told a story. Fractured Dreams stood as a centerpiece, its vivid imagery drawing gasps from viewers. Roots Unchained commanded its own space, the bold colors and intricate details evoking tears from onlookers. New pieces Marcus had created since the art show rounded out the collection, each one a testament to his journey. Critics hailed the exhibition as groundbreaking. One review read, "Marcus Lee's work is a triumph of emotion and storytelling. His paintings challenge us to confront our own humanity, and in doing so, remind us of the beauty that lies within our struggles." For Marcus, the most rewarding part of the night wasn't the accolades or the sales, it was the connections. People approached him, some with tears in their eyes, sharing how his art had touched their lives. A young woman told him that fractured dreams had inspired her to leave an abusive relationship. An older man shared how Roots Unchained reminded him of his journey to overcome addiction. Global recognition. The success of Marcus's solo exhibition launched him onto the global stage. His work was soon featured in major galleries and museums around the world, from Paris to Tokyo, Cape Town to Sydney. Each exhibition drew massive crowds, eager to experience the raw authenticity that had become Marcus's signature. At auctions, his paintings fetched record-breaking sums, solidifying his place as one of the most sought-after contemporary artists. Yet, Marcus remained grounded, using his platform to advocate for other underrepresented artists. He created mentorship programs, provided grants for emerging talents, and spoke openly about the need for diversity in the art world. A poetic revelation. Amid his growing success, Marcus received a piece of news that felt like fate. One evening, while scrolling through articles about his latest exhibition, he came across a headline, "The Victoria Gallery faces financial trouble amid changing trends." The article detailed how the Victoria Gallery, once a cornerstone of exclusivity, had failed to adapt to a changing art world. Its refusal to embrace diverse voices had alienated patrons and artists alike. Now, the gallery was struggling to stay afloat, and rumors swirled that it might soon be put up for sale. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. The gallery that had once dismissed him was now on the verge of collapse, while he stood at the peak of his career. It wasn't just poetic justice, it was an opportunity. He picked up his phone and called his business manager. "I want to know everything about the Victoria Gallery," he said. "If it's going up for sale, I'm interested." The news of the Victoria Gallery's financial troubles was more than just a headline to Marcus Lee, it was a poetic turn of events. Years ago, the gallery had dismissed him, relegating his work to the margins. Now, it was struggling to remain relevant in a world that had begun to embrace diversity and authenticity. For Marcus, it wasn't just an opportunity to expand his influence, it was a chance to reclaim a space that had once symbolized rejection. The decision to buy. Marcus's business manager confirmed the rumors, the Victoria Gallery was indeed up for sale. Financial hardships had forced the once prestigious institution into a corner, unable to compete with newer, more inclusive galleries. Its reputation for exclusivity had become a liability, driving away both artists and patrons. For Marcus, the decision was clear. Buying the gallery wasn't just a business move, it was a personal milestone. He envisioned transforming the space into something greater, a beacon for underrepresented artists, and a symbol of what the art world could become. "Let's put in an offer," Marcus told his manager. "I want to make this happen." The meeting. A week later, Marcus walked through the familiar glass doors of the Victoria Gallery. The once pristine interior felt worn and lifeless, its walls bare and its energy diminished. Marcus couldn't help but remember the last time he had stood here, clutching his portfolio and hoping for a chance. The contrast was striking. Then, he had been a hopeful artist seeking validation. Now, he was a celebrated figure, walking in as a potential owner. Victoria Sterling was waiting in her office, still exuding the polished elegance she was known for. Her tailored suit and perfectly styled hair gave her an air of authority, but there was a strain in her expression that hadn't been there before. The years of financial struggle had taken their toll. "Mr. Lee," she greeted him, extending her hand. "Thank you for your interest in the Victoria Gallery. Please, have a seat." Marcus shook her hand, his expression calm and professional. "It's a pleasure to meet with you, Ms. Sterling." Victoria began the meeting by outlining the gallery's history and potential for revival. She spoke of its legacy, its clientele, and the prestige it once held. Her tone was confident, but Marcus could sense the undercurrent of desperation. To her, he was just another wealthy investor, someone who could save her failing business. The moment of recognition. As the meeting progressed, Marcus decided to subtly confront the past. "The gallery has a remarkable history," he said. "But I imagine it hasn't always been easy to maintain such high standards. How do you decide which artists to feature?" Victoria smiled faintly, though the question seemed to unsettle her. "We've always been very selective," she replied. "Our reputation depends on showcasing only the finest talent." "Selective," Marcus echoed, leaning back in his chair. "Do you ever wonder if you might have turned away someone who went on to prove you wrong?" Victoria paused, her smile faltering slightly. "I suppose it's always a possibility," she said carefully. "But we've always made decisions based on what aligns with our vision." Marcus leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Do you remember me, Miss Sterling?" Victoria frowned, confusion flickering across her face. "I'm sorry," she said slowly. "Should I?" "You should," Marcus replied. "Years ago, I came to this gallery as a hopeful artist. I brought my portfolio, my best work, and asked for an opportunity. You looked at my paintings and told me they were amateurish, that they didn't belong in a gallery like this." Victoria's face went pale, and her eyes widened as recognition dawned. She stared at Marcus, her composure slipping. I didn't realize." "You didn't," Marcus said calmly. "But I remember every word. And I carried them with me, not as a burden, but as motivation. They pushed me to refine my craft, to succeed on my own terms." Victoria looked down, her hands trembling slightly as she fidgeted with a pen. "Mr. Lee, I didn't mean to dismiss you like that. If I had known." Marcus raised a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not here for an apology," he said. "I'm here for the gallery. Let's finalize the deal." The closing deal. The rest of the meeting was brief and professional. Victoria, visibly shaken, outlined the terms of the sale, while Marcus listened attentively. When the paperwork was complete, he signed the final documents, officially becoming the new owner of the Victoria Gallery. As Victoria handed him the keys, her expression was a mixture of regret and disbelief. "I hope you'll be able to restore this place to its former glory," she said quietly. Marcus met her gaze, his expression calm but resolute. "I intend to," he replied. "But it won't be the same gallery. It's time for something new. A new beginning." As Marcus stood in the now empty gallery, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. The space that had once symbolized rejection was now his to reshape, not out of spite, but out of a desire to create something meaningful. The Victoria Gallery was no more. In its place, Marcus envisioned a gallery that celebrated diversity, authenticity, and creativity, a space where no artist would feel the sting of exclusion he had once endured. This is just the beginning, Marcus thought, a quiet smile forming. He had turned the pain of rejection into a platform for change, and he wasn't done yet. With the acquisition finalized, Marcus Lee set his sights on the future. The Victoria Gallery, once a bastion of elitism and exclusivity, was now his to reimagine. Marcus saw its potential not as a revival of its past, but as a transformation into something entirely new, a space that celebrated the diversity and authenticity that the art world often overlooked. He would ensure that no artist ever felt the rejection and dismissal he had experienced within those same walls. Rebranding as the Mosaic Gallery. Marcus renamed the space the Mosaic Gallery, a name inspired by the idea that the beauty of a mosaic lies in its diversity. Each individual piece contributes to the whole, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The gallery's mission was clear: to provide a platform for underrepresented and emerging artists, amplifying voices that had been ignored or marginalized. The physical transformation of the gallery mirrored its new ethos. Gone were the cold, sterile walls and rigid, minimalist decor. Marcus enlisted a team of designers to create a space that was vibrant, welcoming, and dynamic. Murals celebrating different cultures adorned the walls, and the gallery's layout encouraged visitors to linger and engage with the art on display. The space became a living, breathing reflection of its mission. A mission of inclusivity. The Mosaic Gallery's inaugural exhibition, A New Dawn, featured an eclectic mix of artists from diverse backgrounds. Each piece told a story of resilience, identity, and hope, reflecting the experiences of its creators. A young Indigenous artist showcased a series of paintings depicting her community's history and cultural heritage. A photographer who had spent years documenting life on the streets displayed a powerful collection of black and white images. A sculptor from a war-torn country presented intricate works made from salvaged materials, symbolizing rebirth and renewal. Marcus also included several of his own pieces in the exhibition, a symbolic gesture to remind visitors of his journey. Fractured Dreams and Roots Unchained hung prominently in the main hall, drawing crowds and sparking conversations. The gallery wasn't just a space for displaying art, it became a hub for connection and learning. Marcus introduced mentorship programs for emerging artists, workshops for the community, and artist-in-residence opportunities. The gallery provided not just a platform, but also the resources and support that so many artists needed to thrive. The grand opening. The grand opening of the Mosaic Gallery was a night of celebration. Invitations had gone out not just to critics and collectors, but to students, local artists, and community leaders. The gallery was packed with visitors, their voices buzzing with excitement and curiosity. As Marcus stood in the center of the main hall, watching people engage with the art, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what he had envisioned, a space where art wasn't just admired, but felt, where stories were shared, and where everyone belonged. Critics hailed the opening as a turning point in the art world. Articles in major publications praised the Mosaic Gallery as a revolutionary space that redefined what a gallery could be. Marcus Lee has not only created a space for art but a movement, one critic wrote. The Mosaic Gallery is a testament to the power of resilience, creativity, and inclusion. A celebrated institution. The Mosaic Gallery quickly became a beacon for change in the art world. Its exhibitions drew international attention, and its commitment to diversity inspired other institutions to follow suit. The gallery's success wasn't just measured in sales or accolades, it was measured in the lives it touched. Artists who had struggled to find representation now had a platform. Students from underserved communities were introduced to the transformative power of art. Visitors from all walks of life found themselves moved and inspired by the stories on display. Marcus's leadership extended beyond the gallery's walls. He became an advocate for underrepresented artists, using his platform to push for systemic changes in the art world. He created scholarships, funded grants, and partnered with other organizations to ensure that the mission of the Mosaic Gallery reached far and wide. Reflection. One evening, long after the gallery had closed, Marcus stood alone in the main exhibition hall. The space was quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of the lights above the artwork. He walked slowly, taking in the pieces on the walls, each one a testament to the power of creativity and resilience. He stopped in front of Fractured Dreams and gazed at the painting that had once symbolized his struggles. It had been years since he had walked into the Victoria Gallery with his portfolio, only to be mocked and dismissed. That moment had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I needed that rejection, Marcus thought. Without it, he might never have pushed himself to grow. Without the struggle, he might never have envisioned the Mosaic Gallery and its mission. As he locked the doors and stepped outside, Marcus felt a profound sense of pride. The gallery was more than a business, it was a legacy. It was proof that even the most painful moments could lead to something extraordinary. The Mosaic Gallery wasn't just about art, it was about empowerment, connection, and change. And in that quiet moment, Marcus smiled, knowing that he had turned rejection into a platform for generations to come.